makes a more reliable car brand? Is it Lexus or is it Mercedes? Well, you'd be interested to know that in fact Mercedes-Benz isn't the car brand that currently has over 100,000 recalls for blown engines. I've owned Lexus vehicles and many Mercedes-Benz over the years, and I can share and break down some of the key areas of concern. I'm also going to refer to Repair Pal for some of the statistics and the numbers and break down the true reliability of both brands. So let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
Mercedes-Benz has been around a long time, and they built some of the longest lasting, most durable vehicles across the nation and especially Europe. It's not uncommon to find a lot of these vehicles with millions of miles that cab drivers have just literally run the wheels off. But back in the 80s, as a matter of fact, specifically 1989, Toyota realized that they had to get into the game. So along with Nissan going with an Infiniti, and as well as Honda going with an Acura, now Toyota in 1989 decided to come out with something that was direct competition for Mercedes-Benz. Lexus started out in the late 80s, early 90s with sedans based heavily on a lot of the Toyota products. You know, you get the LS400 and then eventually transitioned to IS, ES, and of course, naturally, now to this day, Lexus is a predominantly SUV building manufacturer where you could find all kinds of different vehicles like the NX, RX, GX, and LX, some of which have V8 engines that were naturally aspirated and as reliable as the sun coming out the next day. Lexus has built durable, long-lasting, reliable vehicles for as long as I can possibly remember, and a lot of that came on the back of the fact that they had pride for construction, the fact that they knew how to build a car reliably, but most importantly, they kept what worked. They didn't constantly change and innovate, and they just kept building and utilizing some of the same drivetrains and technology that just has been working for decades, and that allowed them to sit on the backs of reliability, while Mercedes-Benz is one of the most innovative manufacturers and started struggling. When they saw the likes of Lexus trying to get on the wagon and trying to compete directly against Mercedes-Benz, Mercedes tried to innovate better performance, better technology, and tried to stick themselves heads and tails above their competition like Lexus and Acura and Infiniti. But in doing so, reliability started to slide. And of course, the bottom line is always about profits. Throughout the years and the change of hands and CEOs, priorities have shifted for Mercedes as well as CEOs in the Lexus and Toyota brands. Mercedes had wonderful cars like the 190e, the 300e, some with diesel, some with gas, that were durable and long lasting. But things started to change. As they saw some of their competition, they had to find ways to start cutting costs. They were no longer the old boys on the block. They now had to be competitive. Now you have late model Mercedes-Benz, and they don't carry quite the same level of reliability that they once did. Now you get cars that actually rust prematurely. You get electrical problems that seem to crop up out of nowhere. And excess use of modules, meaning a lot of electronics like headlights, power equipment quite often fails when it actually shouldn't. Mercedes-Benz has gone through a lot of changes, and they connected up with the likes of Daimler Chrysler, and things started to shift again. This new outlook on the brand, a new way to market themselves, and certainly a new product meant that there were some challenges, and reliability was one of those. Now Mercedes-Benz, of course, in the latest generations have smaller. They've got everything covered in the segments. You have subcompact, you have a compact SUV like this GLA. Oh, look at that little guy, he's just loving it. These little SUVs are fun and they're frugal. And of course, you still do get some tech like beautiful sunroofs, large display screens, heated, ventilated, cooled seats, brushed aluminum, and wonderful features. But models nowadays like the GLC 300 in the 4MATIC have come a long ways, because this latest generation no longer uses a V6 engine that's naturally aspirated, whereas some of the older models, they were naturally aspirated. The turbo diesels, or they had the naturally aspirated V6s or V8s or twin turbo V8s, they put down serious power and forsaking, of course, fuel economy. But it didn't matter. It was really about the prestige of the brand. Now they come out with replacement engines for the same model line, for example, the 300, and now instead you're getting a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine derived and supported by the likes of Renault, French-built engine builder, that came up with the design that you'll find under a lot of these hoods. Now, I personally own a vehicle, a C300, which has the same 9-speed automatic transmission, the same 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder under the hood that makes about 245 horsepower. And I've had a select number of issues. The quality challenges that modern Mercedes-Benz has today is not what the older Mercedes-Benz seemed to be way back in the 80s and 90s. Things have now changed. Rather now, We've had body panels falling off under there, door speakers pop out. We've also had a host of electrical gremlins, lighting features problems that tell us we have sensors failing, light failing, all kinds of faults that show up on the dashboard that you wouldn't have had years ago in some of the older Mercedes-Benz. Rather, now these late model cars seem to be afflicted with a lot of these electronic gremlins and electrical issues that you never once even considered, and especially not in a Mercedes brand like this. Many people are saying in the forums too, there's a lot that have early generation of that engine that are blowing pistons and blowing holes in the engines. As well, we also had a problem with our PCV, our positive crankcase ventilation system just let go, spit out a check engine light here just this week, and now unfortunately that means a trip to the dealer. But checking that out and researching that actually turns out to be about a 6 or 7 hour labor job plus a $600 part means it's about a $2,500 or $3,000 repair under that hood. We also had the older version of this. Right here we have a GLE. The GLE used to be the ML series of SUVs. We've owned one of those older outgoing versions, and the engine was good. It was a 5-liter V8 engine, put down decent amount of performance. The automatic transmission was fine, but we did have a crank sensor go. We had a water pump go. We had a bunch of electrical gremlins inside, but most importantly, I had to do plugs, coils, and filters. But other than that, standard maintenance for the most part. The problem with that generation was ours was a 1998 and it was built in the US, and unfortunately with that, everything failed other than the engine and gearbox. Pretty much we had air conditioning failures, power window regulators fail, coolant leaks. We have everything that was rusting. I mean, we had rust here, we had rust on the tailgate, rust underneath here, under this trim here as well, and we had rust everywhere. The plastics would fail, the sunroof came off the rail as well, and everything just fell apart. That to me was the beginning of the end, was in the late 90s for Mercedes-Benz when things started to change. So Mercedes also, in all their infinite wisdom, decided, like every other brand, to come out with a model in every single segment. So now, while the C300 was a compact, this is a subcompact SUV. You'll notice you get very similar wheels, but you'll notice the front end's quite different. The front end's a little bit more pointed, a little bit more dressed down. Of course, you get a different type of grille, similar type of headlights, and a lot of features are carryover. You also do get the big glass, but unfortunately these vehicles here in the GLA 250 means the GLA and the GLB is a more upright squared version of this, are very simplistic and low level vehicle. It does give you the 4MATIC, but the difference is these vehicles actually come as a predominantly front wheel drive with the extra all wheels turning here as auxiliary, whereas the C300 is predominantly a rear wheel drive to give you a little extra horsepower and torque to the front. They start giving you these front wheel drive, transversely mounted engines that are more like you're finding in Hondas, Toyotas. So is that such a big deal having the price point vehicles? No. Lexus is doing the same thing. They have their entry-level SUV. This one all-wheel drive as well, the UX 250H. This one gives you a hybrid as well. And this one, of course, comes with a predominantly front-wheel drive, 4-cylinder engine under the hood, small displacement, but it scoots along just nicely. Is this reliable relative to a Mercedes GLA, for example? See, because even the upscale Mercedes-Benz have models that fail. As a matter of fact, many of the models within the GLE lineup have had known issues. Transmissions that won't shift down. In other words, they jerk, slow down, and then they can actually stall. Turbo issues, electronic problems with modules that are failing. And the same thing I had with all of these module failures on the dashboard, that happens on every single one of these vehicles. As well as many commented owners about the seats and the bolsters on the sides actually coming apart and becoming unlaminated from the rest of the seat. Lots of trim parts, they look great, but a lot of the trim is known to be particularly fragile. Go inside and give that infotainment screen a bit of a pull. Start pushing and pulling on door handles and buttons, and you'll quickly see how crunchy, how fragile, and how loose some of those parts actually can be in some of these cars. And you'll quickly realize Mercedes-Benz from the 70s and 80s are not, in my personal opinion and experience, not the same Mercedes-Benz that we see today. See, because Mercedes overall has a rating based on Repair Pal of about 3 out of 5 stars. They rank 27 out of 32 for overall all the brands in the industry, making it a clear loser in terms of overall reliability. The average annual servicing for Mercedes-Benz now is about $908 per year, and you can expect about 0.7 visits per year to the dealer for some major issue. And 13% of these vehicles will likely suffer a major catastrophic failure. In recent years, Lexus has kept a hold of some of the most durable engines. Now they've done some changes we'll talk about in a second, but some of the engines that have continued to keep Toyota and Lexus on the radar for some of the most reliable vehicles are the engine you're going to find under a vehicle like this. Now here is one of those most reliable modern day Lexus vehicles we speak of. This one here clearly is an ES, but it's the 350, means that it's the 3.5 liter V6. Because of this generation, you get all the great trim, LEDs, beautiful gunmetal wheels, and of course, naturally, look at that chrome detailing. Big sunroof on top. This is their big, large luxury sedan, but this one here is actually transversely mounted. That's right, the engine sits sideways, predominantly front-wheel drive. In all-wheel drive format, you can drive a little extra torque to the back, but this is one of those big, luxurious, ultimately reliable vehicles. You get the checkmark headlights, big golden grille that some people love it, some people not so much. And then you have a great car like this, the IS, which is slightly smaller, slightly sportier. You'll notice you get a little bit more flair on the fronts. You get the bigger, more subtle grille, but it's a glorious looking car. You've got this gorgeous metallic paint, LC500 mirrors on both of these cars. You'll see F Sport. This one's non-F Sport, but you do get a smaller sunroof on this. This is a smaller car in the lineup. Of course, you get these beautiful hips. Gorgeous car. I love the lines, the sight lines as this flares down, and you'll see this crease mark that runs down there. Also nice gunmetal gray and LEDs. This one, you get the light bar at the back, and of course you get this nice little lip here. This one's an IS 300 all-wheel drive, and some of these now are turbocharged 4-cylinder engines, and of course now some Lexus vehicles still carry that 3.5 liter V6. That 3.5 is great because it incorporates not just direct fuel injection, but port fuel injection to keep the intake valves clean. That's something many manufacturers and a lot of the competition never considered, and that's why a lot of the cleaning and the intake manifold cleaning and valve cleaning is part of a maintenance regime for a lot of other brands that aren't Lexus, that aren't Toyota, but that's what they've got going on. As well as now the RX. Now the latest RX has changed. In 2022, they switched it up. And now the RX 350, which is the older model here, gives you that glorious 3.5 liter V6. But the current generation now replaced the 350 with the 2.4 liter Turbo 4, so things have started to change. Even the GX 460, 470, a lot of these GXs are naturally aspirated V8 engines and had some of the most durable drivetrains known to Toyota and Lexus. These would last literally forever. The same with the LX 570 is another bulletproof 5.7 liter naturally aspirated V8. You found it in the old school Tundras. They were thirsty, but they ran forever. And everybody knows how reliable a Toyota RAV4 is. Here we have the NX, which is largely based on the RAV4, but the NX comes in now in a series of different drivetrains. You can get hybrid, you can get a turbocharged 2.4, or you can get a naturally aspirated 2.5, made it up to a hybrid system in certain generations and certain models. But regardless, those engines have all proven to be quite reliable in late model Lexus vehicles, except one. This one right here, unfortunately, is their largest SUV. Now, the outgoing LX 570 has been now replaced with an LX 600, or in this case, a 700H. And unfortunately, there have been a host of issues. Now, Lexus still generally builds a very reliable vehicle. Their electrics are robust, their transmissions are pretty robust, and any vehicle that sports the ECPP transmission, we know is not your garden variety Nissan Jatco transmission. It's durable and it's reliable. But this is their large, fully sized SUV in the Lexus lineup. Yes, you do get all the great lighting and you get the massive grille. You really can't mistake that anywhere. All kinds of nice detailing here. Beautiful painted finishing. Look at those gorgeous wheels. Absolutely stunning, I might add. And they're 22-inch as well in diameter. That's a massive wheel. Of course, you get running boards here, two-tone accents, and a glorious interior that is second to none. Is one of the nicest in the business. So even with big roof racks as well as glass on the roof, allows all of the people inside to enjoy this lap of luxury. But unfortunately, there is an engine issue, and now that recall is hitting Toyota and Lexus very, very hard. And unfortunately, I have to report that it's that 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 that you'll find in the LX 600 or the Toyota Tundra has made front page news. Over hundreds of thousand recalls for engines that are blowing apart, main bearings letting go, and unfortunately a lot of it starts with knocking, check engine lights, and naturally a catastrophic failure. But that's what's going on with some of those engines now, the 3.4. It's unfortunate because a lot of their other engines have been a staple of durability and reliability for many, many years. If you're liking the video so far, you're gonna love the rest of the channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and don't forget the notifications bell so you know when the next amazing videos come. Now, I've heard some people comment it's bad fueling, detonation. Some people say it's not cleaning right at the manufacturing facility, and some of the metal particulate lands up in the bearings and causes problems. There's a whole host of reasons, excuses, and justifications, but at the end of the day, one thing that's not totally clear is this GX550 carries essentially the same specification type engine. This GX550 is a gorgeous vehicle, and this also carries a 3.4 liter twin turbo V6 under the hood with the same gearbox. So time will tell on these vehicles. I love the looks of them, I like the style, and I would certainly pick this, albeit hopefully the reliability is there over similarly designed Toyota. So if we're talking reliability overall, Toyota and Lexus specifically are some of the most reliable vehicles on the market today. They make clearly one of the most durable, long-lasting, easy to service hybrid systems on the market. And on top of it, you know, the vehicles that do carry a CVT, it's Toyota's version of an ECVT is what they call it. And it's a planetary gear system, and it certainly takes a lot more torque and is far more robust than anything you're gonna find from even Honda and definitely from Nissan. So before I share with you the models that you should really consider if you're looking at buying one of either one of those brands, I want to break down why in fact Lexus is so reliable, but specifically how do we quantify that? RepairPal. According to RepairPal, Lexus reliability ranks at about 4 out of 5 star. With that said, they rank at 7 out of 32 as opposed to Mercedes-Benz 27 out of 32. So they're clearly one of the best on the market for overall reliability. And that's out of 345 brands across the industry. With that said, the average Lexus costs about $551 per year for annual servicing. So that's almost half of what it is for your average Mercedes-Benz. And the probability of a failure outside of regular maintenance is 0.5 times a year versus 0.7 for the Mercedes. That's a difference between 1 or 2 visits to the dealer unexpectedly each year. And unfortunately, Mercedes is around 13% of those vehicles are significant failures by consequence, whereas Lexus, on average, as per RepairPal, is around 8%. So not just based on my own personal experience with electrical faults and body panels rusting away, the bottom line is even RepairPal and mechanics across the nation all get together and confirm that Lexus is, generally speaking, more reliable. Not every single model, but most models are more reliable than most Mercedes models too. So for me, my personal picks for off-roading SUV goes to the Lexus GX550. My pick for regular commuter SUV goes to the NX450H Plus, which this is not. This is a regular hybrid. I would go to the 450H Plus because it's a plug-in hybrid and allows you to run free range for up to 40 or 50 kilometers. So that would be my pick for that, as well as for my favorite car. Right there, we have the IS series of cars for Lexus, and I love the IS because it's rear-wheel drive, it's sportier to drive for sure. The IS 300 would not be my pick. I would even go with the IS 350, which gives me the naturally aspirated 300 horsepower V6, or the IS 500 if I didn't have to worry about rain and snow. Then the IS 500 gives you a 472 horsepower naturally aspirated V8 under the hood, and it absolutely rumbles. So that's my picks for Lexus. How about Mercedes? For me, there aren't a lot of Mercedes that I would strongly recommend. I mean, there's some, they're all fun to drive, but I would look at the M276 engine. Instead of the GLC 300, you'd be looking at the GLC 43 AMG package. That gives you that twin turbo 3-liter V6. That's one of their more reliable drivetrains. Now, early generations have some timing chain issues. There are known problems with some coolant leaks and oil leaks, but generally as a rule, it's one of the more durable engines relative to at least the 2-liter engine, and certainly better than some of the other drivetrains. Sadly, they've gotten rid of a lot of their twin turbo V8s, and even that 4-liter twin turbo V8 that you also get in some of the models are definitely a nice vehicle, a nice engine to get, but the problem is that's all going away. So for simplicity, keep it simple. When it comes to Mercedes-Benz, the last thing you want to do is go upstream. Technology abound, that's where you get into trouble. So getting into vehicles like the GLS, the GLE like this, or any of those more premium models, you're likely going to see huge expensive repairs, huge expensive maintenance services, and those are what drives that average maintenance cost up. When I say $900, that's the Midland. These are probably a lot more. They're more like $1,500 to $2,000 a year. And especially once you start adding tires and brakes, then it goes up from there. So generally with Mercedes-Benz, engines, they're not all bad. There's some good engines out there, and there's certainly some fun cars. Avoid some of the major cost expenditures like air ride suspension systems, bigger engines, or even some of those 2-liter turbo 4s, and get yourself something that's simple. Simple rules the game for Mercedes. So at the end of the day, who's more reliable overall, even with those major recalls of all the 100,000 bad engines? It's Lexus. And with all that said, you want to know reliability BMW versus Mercedes? You're going to want to check that one out. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. All right, bye-bye.